Your body keeps the score, but astrologically, it keeps planets too. And when one planet in your chart goes into overdrive, your body feels it long before your mind understands what's happening. Burnout isn't just stress. Burnout is also planetary imbalance. One cosmic function doing too much, too fast, and for too long. So, in this video, I'm going to be discussing planetary burnout and how planetary imbalance shows up in your body. So, if you want to know more, stick around. You definitely don't want to miss this. Hello, my loves. As always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. So, today we're talking about planetary burnout. And you may be slightly confused like, what does that mean? Essentially, every planet in your chart represents a different psychological and physical system. So, remember in grade school, you learned about the different functions of the body and the different systems, right? Well, each system corresponds to a different planet. And when I talk about planetary burnout, it's this concept where there's a system that's in overdrive. There's a system that could be overcompensating for another system or that's taking over the show within your physical body. And you can always track that to the planet that governs that system. Now, this can happen for a variety of ways or for a variety of reasons, I should say. However, it's important to understand this correlation because when you are actively experiencing this, now you can start to understand not only why, but how to remedy it. I think that's the best part about astrology. Astrology will show you the problem and simultaneously the solution. Okay, so like I said, every planet in your chart represents a different psychological and physical system. So, the sun represents your identity and your vitality, like your physical, vital life force energy. The moon represents your emotions and, to a certain extent, your nervous system. Mercury governs mind, breath, and communication. Venus represents pleasure, softness, and sensory regulation. And when I say sensory regulation, I mean your five senses. Mars represents and is correlated with your physical drive, anger, and inflammation. Jupiter is associated with expansion, enthusiasm, and metabolism. Saturn correlates to structure, bones, and pressure. Uranus is associated with the electrical nervous system. Neptune is associated with sensitivity and energetic boundaries. And Pluto is associated with deep tension, power, and survival. When life conditions force a planet to overwork, that planet burns out and your body responds first. So it's like every system has its operation, right? Every system operates in a certain way. And there is a homeostasis that is your natural state of being, right? But like I said before, sometimes a system can become overworked. It's in overdrive, and perhaps its functions are overshadowing the other systems. So this happens when you are overusing the planet, underusing the planet, compensating one planet for another. This could be when you're experiencing a major transit. It could be when you're repeating a childhood coping pattern. Or it could be living from the planet's shadow side instead of its gift or its quote unquote positive side. So understand what this means. So when I talk about, like, for instance, overusing a planet, if the sun represents identity and vitality, right? Like your life force energy, If you are doing the most physically, sometimes that could be an example of overusing that planet. For instance, if you are living from a planet's shadow instead of its gift, perfect example of that would be Pluto. Now, this could be because you're experiencing and are actively experiencing a planetary transit of some sort, or there could be an external circumstance that is triggering your Pluto that's making it either work in overdrive or exhibit its shadow side. The shadow side of Pluto is manipulation, it's violence, it's, all of those things. And maybe that's what you're leading with because either you're experiencing a Pluto transit or there's something in your external environment that is triggering your Pluto, right? This is why burnout feels emotional and physical. It's not just stress, it's energetic misalignment. And this is so important because, again, it gives us the why. We've all experienced periods of time where we're going through something, we're feeling an ailment, and we're like, why is this happening? And especially once you're on your spiritual journey, you understand that it's not just physical. And oftentimes the physical pain, the physical ailment, the physical misalignment is really a call for you to examine something deeper. And of course, astrology has the answer. So here's the problem. Most people try to fix burnout by adjusting their schedule. They're like, okay, let me change how I eat. Let me stop doing this thing. Let me try to alleviate the stress in a very external sort of way, right? They focus on the external. But burnout isn't just logical. It's somatic, psychological, and planetary. So planetary burnout shows up through chronic fatigue, emotional heaviness, headaches, tension, inflammation, sensory overload, mood swings, numbness, restlessness, insomnia, lack of inspiration. Your chart shows which planet is overworking and why your body is responding the way that it is. And it's not just about looking at your natal chart. Your natal chart is how you are predisposed to being, right? It's your design. But really, this comes into play when we look at transits, because transits can let you know what part of your natal chart is being activated at that time and which planet is being activated. So you can understand if you're either overusing a planet, underusing a planet, if that planet is agitated, if you're really tapping into the shadow side of that planet. So it's your natal chart plus the transits to your natal chart that's really going to help you understand yourself and the situation and the burnout that you are experiencing. And when you understand this, you stop fighting your body and start healing the energy behind your exhaustion. One of my favorite phrases is, when you know better, you do better. And how wonderful is it to know, okay, I'm experiencing this inflammation, right, in my body because Mars is being activated in my chart right now. And I'm going through a lot of stress at work. And so Mars is sort of overcompensating. So if I have inflammation, that means that I need to cool something down, whether it's my emotions, whether I need to ice a certain part of my body, right? Like, this is information that once you know it, you can use it to heal. And that's the absolute beauty of astrology. It literally gives you the information that you need in real time. So now let's get into some examples. So here is exactly how planetary burnout works. What burns each planet out, the real life situations that trigger it, and how it shows up in your body. So first we begin with the sun. And sun burnout could really be indicative of identity exhaustion. So what burns out is performing, being quote unquote on constantly, leadership roles, and maintaining an identity that isn't authentic. So some of the real life triggers that could activate this sun burnout: being the boss, parent, motivator, or role model. Kind of when people pedestalize you in a sense, especially if you don't feel like you should be on a pedestal. Constant visibility, feeling like you can't let your light dim. I mean, you shouldn't hide your light, but if you feel like you have to be on all the time, that could definitely lead to sun exhaustion. And suppressing your true self. So how this shows up physically, it could be fatigue, loss of joy, feeling directionless, or just like quote unquote, I don't feel like myself. So clearly the sun has everything to do with identity, right? And feeling like yourself. Remember, the sun governs identity and your vital life force energy. So now let's move on to the moon. So moon burnout is really indicative of emotional fatigue. So what it burns out: emotional caretaking, absorbing other people's feelings, lack of stability, and no space for emotional release. Some of the real life triggers: being the quote unquote strong friend, caring for everybody else, chaotic home or relationships, and suppressing feelings to stay functional. So how this shows up in the physical body: heaviness, irritability, crying easily, and or emotional overload. Now let's move on to Mercury. So Mercury burnout could really be indicative of mental overload. So what burns it out? Nonstop communication, multitasking, problem solving, information overwhelm. I think that Mercury burnout is something that all of us are kind of collectively dealing with right now, with the overload of information, the fact that life feels like a dumpster fire. We are constantly bombarded with breaking news and different things like that. So I think for many of us, Mercury is definitely overstimulated and burnt out. Some of the real life triggers: too many notifications. I was just thinking about this the other day. Like, I was literally sitting down doing one of these videos and I had forgot to put my phone on do not disturb. And the amount of notifications that were coming in, and so many of them were bullshit. I mean, where at the time that I'm recording this, it's very recently after Thanksgiving. And so Black Friday, Cyber Monday, like all of these notifications. And I was definitely feeling overwhelmed and overstimulated. And so I know I definitely had to turn off notifications because it can be distracting and it could be so jarring, right? I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. Anyway, to continue with the real life triggers: digital overload, intellectually demanding work, or constant decision making. And so how this shows up physically in your life: headaches, anxiety spirals, mental fog, or even scattered thoughts. Next, we move on to Venus burnout, which could be pleasure deprivation. And this is important. I'm very much a Venusian person, and pleasure, I've really come to understand the importance of pleasure in our lives, especially because it feels like so much of life now is devoid of pleasure. But pleasure deprivation is definitely a thing and definitely something you shouldn't ignore. So what burns it out? Giving more than receiving, relationship stress, lack of beauty, affection, or softness, and sensory deprivation. So some of the real life triggers: conflicts in relationships, no time for pleasure, overgiving, disconnect from joy. And how this shows up in the physical body: numbness, irritability, overstimulation, loss of desire. I would even say a lack of libido as well here. Next up, we've got Mars. So Mars burnout can really be indicative of overdrive and inflammation. So what burns it out? Pushing too hard, anger repression, forcing productivity, physical overexertion, just doing the most physically. So some of the real life triggers: high pressure work, conflict, overtraining, right? Especially if you're someone who's really like training for a marathon or anything physical, and hustling nonstop, which is something that a lot of people are experiencing right now. And how it shows up in the physical body: tension, insomnia, irritability, inflammation, and burnout rage, because that's definitely a thing. Next up, we move on to Jupiter. And Jupiter burnout is really indicative of overexpansion. So what burns it out? Saying yes to everything, taking on too many opportunities, overindulgence, and unrealistic expectations. So some of the real life triggers associated with a Jupiter burnout: sudden growth, too many responsibilities, overcommitting out of optimism, and FOMO, fear of missing out, for those who don't know what FOMO is. As I was saying this, it reminds me of so many people desire to go viral, right? Everyone wants a viral TikTok, a viral reel. And in the space of entrepreneurship, this is something that people talk a lot about because it could really skyrocket your business. Or even in the personal space, now that everyone has a personal brand, it could really skyrocket you into fame. However, being set up for that physically is also a thing. Imagine you go from a small business where you get one order per month, and now you have a video that goes viral, and now you've got 100 orders per day. That overwhelm, that's Jupiter doing the most, right? And it's really important to understand the physical implications of these things. And that's why I love this topic, because it helps us understand that a lot better. So in terms of how Jupiter burnout shows up in your body, it could be overwhelm, exhaustion, digestive issues, and scattered focus. I would also dare to say anxiety too. That anxiety of, can I live up to this? Am I prepared for this? Can I handle all of this? Definitely anxiety inducing. Next, we move on to Saturn burnout, and that can be indicative of chronic pressure. So what burns it out? Perfectionism, long-term responsibility, fear-based productivity. Oh, that's a big one that a lot of people engage with on a regular basis. And self-criticism. So some real-life triggers: being the provider, financial pressure, carrying burdens alone, impossible standards. Like, pressure definitely makes diamonds, but when you're experiencing like a Saturn transit that's putting a lot of pressure on you, it's so debilitating because you feel like you're under the weight of the world, right? And so how does this show up in your physical body? Back pain, stiffness, tightness, and emotional shutdown. Now we move on to Uranus burnout, which is indicative of nervous system shock. So what it burns out: unpredictability, sudden changes, too much stimulation, and just generally chaos. Chaos is definitely the realm of Uranus. And when you're experiencing Uranus burnout, you're likely in a time or a season of like utter chaos. So real life triggers: unstable environments, creative surges, unexpected events, disrupted routines. Now, how this shows up physically in the body: jitters, insomnia, shocks of energy, sudden crashes. It's just instability within your physical body, and specifically your nervous system, dysregulated nervous system, really high highs, super low lows emotionally. That's definitely indicative of Uranus burnout. Next, we move on to Neptune burnout, which is energetic drain. Okay, so what it burns out: lack of boundaries, emotional or spiritual absorption, escapism, and creative overwhelm. The real life triggers for Neptune burnout: draining people, like energy vampires, caretaking, codependency, spiritual work without grounding. Now that's super important. Because oftentimes, especially when you're on the spiritual journey, you could be really enmeshed in doing spiritual work, but without the grounding, you could feel like a helium balloon that's been let loose. It gets you disoriented. Sometimes you will have feelings of, like, I know personally, I've had feelings similar to vertigo or even like anxiety attacks. Grounding with spiritual work is necessary. Okay. So, how does this show up in the body? Foggy mind, exhaustion, confusion, low immunity. Okay, so when your immune system is down, now it's not to say that Neptune burnout is the sole reason for that, but you may want to look at your transits to see what's going on with Neptune currently, what's going on with Neptune in your natal chart that may clue you in as to why your immunity is low, why you're experiencing brain fog, and things of that nature. And then finally, we arrive at Pluto burnout. Now, this is very indicative of deep tension. So what it burns out: control issues, emotional intensity, survival mode. So many people are experiencing that right now. And shadow work with no integration. Oh man, shadow work with no integration. Like, the phrase that's coming to mind is like living in a cemetery. I don't know why. But shadow work with no integration, it can have you literally living in hell because you haven't used that to transcend from your shadow, right? Understanding your shadow and, doing the shadow work is a part of the equation. The other part of the equation, integration, so that you're not roaming through the depths of hell continuously. So some of the real life triggers with Pluto burnout: power struggles, toxic dynamics, trauma activation, and internal pressure to perform. So, how does this show up in the physical body? Deep knots, compulsive thoughts, emotional shutdown, emotional turmoil. Remember that, like shadow work without integration, it could literally have you roaming through hell. So it's important to understand that. And I hope this sort of made it clear how some of your physical ailments are really associated with planetary imbalances. And when I say imbalances, this could mean a planetary activation, a planet doing too much, being activated, let's say, by a square or an opposition in your natal chart, right? These could be external circumstances that gets a particular planetary system to overcompensate. And everything that I described is a result of that planetary overcompensation. So, of course, much like everything else, there is a shadow side, and every planet has a shadow side. And that planetary burnout could be a result of you tapping more into the shadow side of a planet as opposed to its light or its gift. So, every planet has a shadow that we tend to overexpress at times. So, we perform our sun. We overfeel our moon. We overthink with Mercury. We overgive with Venus. We overwork with Mars. We overexpand with Jupiter. We overburden with Saturn. We overstimulate with Uranus. We overabsorb with Neptune. And we over-control with Pluto. Burnout isn't weakness. It's a planet that wants relief. If that planet is doing the most, recognizing what that is so you can stop doing that is what helps alleviate the pain, alleviate the pressure, and alleviate the burnout. And it's interesting because as I'm saying this, I'm like, it really is that simple. It really can be once you know this information. So perhaps if you're experiencing any of these things, understanding the shadow side of these planets is really the first step in alleviating the pressure and alleviating the burnout. So here's a wellness tip, and I like to call this the planetary reset. This is a simple reset based on the planet that is overloaded or the planet that is doing the most. So, with respect to the sun, sunlight and rest from performing. If you feel like you're being on all the time, the best reset is to shut off for a little bit. When it comes to the moon, doing an emotional check-in, and this requires sequestering yourself from the world and really being there for yourself emotionally. For Mercury, it is a brain dump. So you could do this via journaling, you could do this via voice note or whatever modality you think is best, right? But being able to get it out is going to be, key. And also no multitasking. Like, we live in a society that glorifies multitasking, that glorifies doing the most. And sometimes the reset that you need is actually doing the least. For Venus, sensory pleasure, beauty, softness. When people talk about the soft life, when people talk about, a spa day or a retail therapy or just doing something to make you feel indulgent and beautiful, that is a perfect way to reset an overactive Venus, because perhaps you've been overgiving, right? When it comes to Mars, move your body for 1 or 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be any extensive, but since Mars is such a physical planet, the best reset for that is some sort of physical activity, especially if you're experiencing a lot of stress, if you're experiencing, if you're experiencing physical exhaustion, a physical reset might not be the best thing. However, it does wonders, even if it's just a walk outside, even if it's just, any sort of light activity for 2 minutes, that could really be a great way to reset an overactive Mars. For a Jupiter reset, simplify. Jupiter does the most, it expands everything. So simplify, cut things down, and most importantly, say no to certain things. When it comes to a Saturn reset, you'll want to stretch, especially the spine, and try to unload some of your responsibilities, delegate responsibilities if you can. For Uranus, you'll want to minimize stimulation. So this means limiting distractions, turning off notifications, and just doing the best to not feed into the dumpster fire and all of the distractions that the world is kind of enmeshed in right now. When it comes to Neptune, you're going to want to do an energetic cleansing, and Neptune and energetic cleansing definitely speaks to water. So take a bath, take a shower. If you can, go to the beach, do some sort of spiritual cleansing that will help reset your Neptune. And then when it comes to Pluto, release control, breath work, breathe deeply into the belly, right? Anything that helps you reset your emotions, anything that allows you to relinquish control is a great way to reset your Pluto. And remember, small shifts equal massive balance. It doesn't have to be the most. You don't have to do the most. You're already in burnout mode. So doing the most is not the remedy for that. Remember, small shifts, massive balance. So again, how you would arrive at this information is by studying your transits. And so the transits are the relationship between what's currently going on in the sky or what's going on in the sky at a particular time as it relates to your natal chart. And depending on what's going on in the sky at a particular time, it may be activating a certain point in your natal chart. Okay. And so that's how you would understand if you're experiencing planetary burnout or just what's going on generally. And when I talk to clients about their transits and perhaps what they're feeling, because maybe they're like, I'm super stressed out right now, or I'm exhausted and I don't understand why. It can literally be just as simple as looking at the transits to their natal chart and saying, oh, this is why this is happening. Or, oh, you're experiencing a harsh Mars transit right now, so you're probably feeling exhausted, or you're experiencing insomnia. It could really be that simple. Right? And that's the crazy thing. That's the thing that always blows my mind about astrology, is that there are times where I will be, and this even happens for me, even though, I'm a professional astrologer, sometimes I do forget that I'm experiencing transits too. And I'll be experiencing something. I'm like, I'll spend days saying, why is this happening? Why am I feeling this way? And then literally I just look at the transits and I'm like, oh, I get it. And then I feel much better, or I know exactly what to do to feel much better. Okay. So again, it really could be that simple. All right, so if you want to know more, if you want to understand the planets behind your burnout, your emotional wiring, and your wellness archetype, the first step would be to take my self-care signature quiz. Link is in the description box below. It's a fun little quiz that can really help you understand your self-care archetype, point blank, period. But if you want to understand things further, if you want to understand not only yourself, but why you're experiencing what you're experiencing, then you'll definitely want to take advantage of my signature natal chart experience, the blueprint. Now, the beauty of this service, the blueprint, is that we don't just go into your natal chart, we actually go into your transits as well. Part of the service is a full natal chart reading, but then you get what I like to call my 30-day alignment map, which tracks the transits for 30 days after your reading so that you understand what's going on, not just how you're designed, but what you can anticipate in the following month. And then thereafter, once you become a blueprint client, I have a service called the Blueprint Continuum, which is essentially your transit report for every quarter. So you'll understand exactly what to anticipate for the next coming months. All right. So I got you covered on all bases. If you're interested in any of that, the links will be in the description box below. All right. But in any event, I wanted to bring this video to you because it is important information that I don't think too many people are talking about, number one. And number two, it can literally help you understand why you're feeling how you're feeling and how to remedy it. All right, my loves, thanks so much for tuning into this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.